Well, thank you, Kateri, for that introduction. Although I do want to start on a more somber note to just echo what the President said this morning about the tragic events in Oklahoma. As you probably have heard, the death toll has gone quite high there. And the President said that our prayers are with the people of Oklahoma today, and we will back up those prayers with deeds for as long as it takes. So this is quite a tragedy there. Well, let me switch briefly then, and this will be brief, to our remarks. I must say that Kateri and I discussed quite a while ago my coming and talking with you yesterday, but events didn't work out as far as timing goes. But in some sense, it's actually fortuitous. As she said, I was sworn in about 3 hours ago, and this is my first chance to make some remarks. And it's fortuitous because it's in alignment with our agenda perfectly. Efficiency is going to be a big focus as we go forward. Let me say, in fact, why I'm back, because many have questioned the judgment of someone who would, like second marriage, place hope over experience. But in fact, the last act of the first go-round was, in fact, jumping up the efficiency standards for air conditioners. And so now I think there's kind of a continuity after 12 years to get back into this fray. But the reason I'm back, look, the Department of Energy, sometimes maligned, has really important missions, two of which intersect the President's highest level agenda very much. Of course, first, and I would say foremost in terms of my own motivation for returning to the Department, or returning to government service, the energy and climate agenda. Secondly, the nuclear security agenda is also central to what the President wants to achieve. But we're here to talk more about the first. And let me just say off the bat that, I've been working these problems for quite a while. I have never seen a credible solution to the climate risk mitigation challenge, to reach the kinds of goals we need to reach without the demand side playing a very, very important part in that. And so in that context, the President really is committed to our doing what we can in this environment to move aggressively on climate, and again, the demand side, the efficiency agenda will be absolutely critical. Now, as you all know, I'm not going to lecture the usual numbers to this crowd, but quite a bit of our primary energy goes unused today. I do know something about thermodynamics, so we know we're not going to capture all of that, but we can sure do a lot better with better technology and with policies, of course, that align with that. More efficient technologies, use of quotes, waste heat, ... Earlier this year, again, the President, I think, made a very forceful call, I think very much aligned with what you all agree with, the idea of essentially doubling energy productivity by 2030, including, among other things, the proposed, for example, energy efficiency race to the top for states and utilities. We hope that will be treated well in the budget process. But I also want to emphasize that in general, moving forward at the Department, besides efficiency being an important theme, so will picking up our game in terms of working with the states. States and regions, I think, is where clearly a lot of the action goes, certainly on efficiency, and we are going to have a focus in strengthening our team and picking up our pace, as I say, in working with the states. I think in terms of the efficiency agenda, we also, I think like you have, acknowledge and applaud the bipartisan effort to pass new legislation on energy efficiency in Congress. We certainly support the goals of the Shaheen-Portman legislation, and we see companion action in the House. In fact, I have certainly met with senior leadership in both chambers. I mean, there's a ways to go to get it together, but there's clearly an interest in moving this. This is the kind of initiative that I think has a real chance to move forward. And I certainly will work with Senator Shaheen, Portman, and others to try to help make it work. So again, energy efficiency is a simple message. We don't have time for a lot of discussion, but it's going to be a focal point of my time as secretary. Let me just say a few words in terms of the agenda, but again, we won't have time to drill into it in detail. Clearly, appliance standards are very much on people's mind, and we know that the cumulative effect of standards enacted over the last 4 years, start going into the $1 trillion range over a few decades. But again, we can do more. And look, we recognize that there's a backlog of appliance standards that are waiting to be approved and implemented. I can assure you that at least I will be certainly turning my attention to this logjam very early on, seeing if we can't get these moved out so that they in fact are material in our going forward. Similarly, we want to work perhaps in convening and meeting with manufacturers, et cetera, and looking for industrial opportunities. Fuel economy remains very important. Despite the fact that, of course, we have an incredible story in terms of the increase in hydrocarbon production in the United States, but that does not change the fact that we need to reduce our overall reliance on oil. The pathways are pretty clear: efficiency, alternative fuels, electrification, different transportation paradigms. But clearly, efficiency was at the top of that list. And of course, the President moved forward with the new fuel economy standards for 2025. And this will clearly have a major impact in terms of fuel utilization. Manufacturing, another area again that we want to focus on. In March, the department launched the new Clean Energy Manufacturing Initiative with objectives of course, boosting U.S. manufacturing competitiveness through increased energy productivity and energy efficiency throughout the sector, and second, to increase competitiveness in producing clean energy materials and products here in our country. As an example, I mean, this may sound like I'm getting into my nerdish background, but things like a new manufacturing initiative on wide bandgap semiconductors for power electronics sounds pretty specific, but it has enormous efficiency implications if we can move this forward. From grid integration of renewables, appliances, consumer electronics, all kinds of applications at very different scales. Computers, where of course huge amounts of waste heat in general, and the estimates are as high as potentially like a 75% savings with these new technologies. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do and will do to advance this. Building efficiency, you know a lot about that. I will just actually give here an anecdote from my previous existence of 4 hours ago. As an MIT professor, we had, it's wonderful to turn students loose. So we turned them loose. We gave them like $200 for a project. They mapped the energy intensity of the campus. One building was glowing red in the obvious map. It was a chemistry building, and the students, it was very educational. First assumption, look, the lights are on all night. Well, a little calculation said that was like epsilon of the scale being looked at. So what they found was it was simply pure bad management of chemical hoods, which are huge energy sinks. So a simple act of the department head immediately had enormous savings. That then led to a redesign of the requirements for a new building being built. The result is that building has only half the energy use per square foot of comparable research buildings. And so this is a great story. MIT, it's true in other places, MIT kicked this off, and now the administration acknowledges a good solid at least $3.5 million a year of operating expense savings. Admittedly, MIT was a target-rich environment for efficiency, but anyway, it really has worked. And also now, going back to DOE, the Better Building Challenge, I think I won't go through all of this, but another area is we really want to pick up the pace on the President's commitment for $2 billion worth of energy savings performance contracts. We've passed the $500 million mark. We have in train enough to get there, but we got to pick up the pace to get there by the end of this year, and that's the kind of thing that we will be looking at. So these are very brief remarks. It's more to tell you what we have in mind and kind of our ideas going forward. We want to be very open. We want to get your input as to how we can move this forward. I'll go back and say that, as I said earlier, I just don't see solutions to our biggest energy and environmental problems without a very, very strong demand-side response, and that's why it's quite logical to move this way up in our priorities. So let's work together. You know where to find me now, and I look forward to your input. And I perhaps apologize for the brevity of my remarks, but maybe that's a blessing as well. So thank you very much.